Hello, guys, and welcome to the new show, Unrestricted Sports. I am Brendan, and I'm joined with my co host, Nolan. And today we have a very stacked schedule of what we're going to be talking about. We are going to be going with our top five current QBs in the league. So, Nolan, I'll let you start off. You can go from lowest to highest, so we get a little bit of a question mark at who's at your number one at the end of all of it. But you are good to go.
Okay, I'm actually gonna start with my number one. I think my number one's pretty obvious. After obviously a down year last year, but Tom Brady's my number one. Undisputable. I think he's the greatest quarterback to ever play the game of football.
Really, I am surprised. I am surprised because that is also who I have at my current number one. I'll let you explain why that is, but I am going to give my own reasons for why I think he's number one. But you are free to go ahead and give
All right.
your reasoning right now.
So compared to other quarterbacks that are up there in the league, he has a lower completion percentage. But if you look at notable wide receivers he's played with, he hasn't played with the most elite wide receivers in the league. I mean, you could argue Gronk, obviously one of the best tight ends, if not the best. But you go to think of other receivers that were good for him, and Edelman and Randy Moss. You didn't even have Randy Moss in his prime. Julian Edelman, solid receiver, but nobody ever thought of him as a wide receiver one, let alone a very deep threat. His best receiver was Antonio Brown. He only had him for a game. Um, I think I think it's good to know that Tom Brady is one of only two players to have over 70,000 passing yards and 1,000 rushing yards. Not that he runs the ball a lot, but 70,000 passing yards is a pretty substantial number to hit.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. You have to look at what Tom Brady did last year with the. I mean, this is undisputable. It was the worst wide receiver corp in the league. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think that those players themselves are bad. I think all of those players could be solid second receiving options for those who were second or third receiving options. They were all decent players, but the problem was is that Brady's number one guy. He always has a number one guy, even if that guy isn't necessarily a number one wide receiver in any other system. He always has a guy that he can go to trust. Julian Edelman was banged up all last year. He had
Exactly.
no one to throw to.
Exactly.
Uh, and Keel Harry, I like the kid. I think he's going to be really good. I still think he's going to be really good. I saw him play in college, and he was an incredible talent. I think they really scored on him. They just got really unlucky with him getting hurt in training camp.
Yeah.
I think he is going to be a really good wide receiver to develop with Jarrett Stidham.
And
But he didn't play.
yeah.
He didn't get those reps, and he wasn't ready to. He wasn't ready to play. And then you look at their last game, where Brady was, in the playoffs. And normally that's when he comes out and does well. But even when he did well in the past with minimal, sort of receiving weapons, he still had a guy he could trust to catch the ball. Julian Edelman was that guy this year, even though he was still hurt. And when I saw the ball go through Julian Edelman's hands and hit him in the chest, and he dropped the ball, like that's a pass that Julian Edelman makes. So that's how I knew, one, that Julian Edelman was seriously hurt. That's the first thing I knew, because Julian Edelman's a tough guy. But secondly, that's when I knew they were going to lose the game. Because if Julian Edelman can't complete a first down pass that should have been an easy catch and kept them in the game, then, that was when I knew it was over. And that's also when I started to think, hey, Brady might actually leave.
Yeah.
Um,
I think you can also
you
pin that on. A lot of people say Tom Brady declining, getting old, whatever. Obviously, getting old, you can't debate that. But you look at inconsistencies in the wide receiver core that he had, and it was just ridiculous. You get Antonio Brown coming in, you're like, oh my god, Antonio Brown. Then he leaves. And Keel Harry comes in midseason.
Tom Brady, when Tom Brady he started off. You have to think about this. Yes, Tom Brady's older. That just means he needs a little more help around him.
Yeah.
That means that he can't. That I still think that he can be the guy who can help you win games and carry a underperforming team. He just needs a slight increase in talent around him to do so.
And that's why Tampa Bay is the best fit for him.
The reason he's been falling off a cliff, as Max Kellerman likes to say a lot the past few years, isn't because he was a bad quarterback. It's because his wide receiver talent has consistently gone down year after year. And then when you combine that with this year, your starting center going out, who's been a staple of your offensive line for as long as I can remember, and your whole offensive line, which, they had some good pieces, but they weren't necessarily top tier. They protected Brady good, but they weren't top tier O linemen. But when you have your starters in that going down, and you're playing with, I think it was at one point it was like they only had one or two guys from their first line actually going into the games to play because the rest of them were hurt.
Yeah.
And you had the rest of them being, backup guys. You can't put that all on Brady. Now, you can say that, yes, in the past, maybe he could have overcome that. 07 form Brady, younger Brady might have been able to pull that off, and he did. But when he's older, he can still do incredible things, but he just can't do that, and you can't hold that against him. I think in Tampa Bay with, I think his name is Tristan Wirfs, their O-lineman that they drafted. That's a... He's going to be a big piece on that line.
I love Iowa.
I can tell you right now. You can not just jump out of the deep end of a pool, all right, and do what he did, because that's incredible. He's going to be a big piece.
Yeah.
Combine that with the best wide receiver and tight end corps that Tom Brady has ever played with his level of experience. A little bit of regression due to age is not the reason why he was playing so poorly the past couple of years.
Yeah.
It was his wide receiver core, and everyone knew that. Anyone with a brain knows that. I mean, let's be real here. That's just how it is. So I think that when you look at that, Tom Brady will be the top quarterback for this current upcoming year.
Yeah.
I think that it's going to be undisputed. People might challenge it now because it hasn't happened yet, and they're relying on that old Tom Brady hate that so many people have because people like to hate on success. But I think if he starts doing really well in Tampa, people will overlook the fact that he was with the Patriots, the evil empire, which, once again, people hate on because they're successful. And if he takes a Super Bowl or two, people will see that as, oh, well, Tom Brady was really the victim in all this because he was getting shorted by Belichick's system, which isn't necessarily a wrong system. It's been very successful, but, that's how people will see it. And I think that will start to change the narrative on those who don't like Brady as much as they, or at least respect Brady as much as they should, I would say. But I'm surprised that our top pick actually matched up. I thought you were going to disagree with that, even though I know that you were probably going to put him on the list. I was surprised that you also had him at number 1. So I'll let you go to your number 2, and then I will share mine as well.
Okay, so despite, in recent news not having any MVP votes, I think Russell Wilson is... If Tom Brady went to some bad franchise just to finish his career there, I would put Russell Wilson number 1. Russell Wilson can do everything on the field. Super, super good. Never can predict what he's going to do. He's never had a very solid run game to rely on, similar to Tom Brady in that aspect. But I think it's hard to look at Russell Wilson and say he's not at least a top 5 quarterback. You look at his QBR, he's averaged over 100 QBR. I think right now it's 101.2 as of the end of this season, and the only person above him is Aaron Rodgers at 102.4, and that is ridiculous to average that. When your best receivers have been Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett, and Jimmy Graham, and look at Jimmy Graham now. Anyways.
All right. I don't think you're going to like this very much. But I considered Russell Wilson for this top 5 list, and I didn't put him on it.
Really? For what reason?
I don't think it's because he's bad. I think that he is a top 10 quarterback in the league right now, definitely. But Russell Wilson has never really been that guy who has been an overwhelmingly impressive quarterback.
I mean, you can't blame it on him. You can't blame it on him all the time. Obviously, there's moments in his career, dumb decisions, but you look at the Super Bowl.
Really big.
You look at that Super Bowl. It wasn't his call to pass the ball. It was Pete Carroll's.
But it was his call to who to pass it to.
Correct. But when you have beast mode in your backfield on the 1 yard line, you know, it,
Yes, I 100% agree. I do think that the result of that would have been the same. Um, I think that that game was going to end the same way. Either way, it was either going to end up with a beast mode stop or an interception. I see the Patriots winning that game. Um, but
I think also.
I don't know. I just don't see Russell Wilson as a top five QB, and it's not necessarily because of the mistakes that he's made either. It's just I think that there's better options, and that
That's
I
fair.
mean
I think.
I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I wouldn't put him personally in my top five current
See,
QBs.
to me, it's blatantly obvious why he's a top 5 quarterback. You have consistent play out of him with a good QBR. He has the most wins in a 7-season span by a quarterback. 75.
But what has he done in the playoffs?
Just listen. 75 wins in 7 seasons. And then you look at the playoffs. I don't think the Seahawks have ever gone into the playoffs without some sort of injury list. You look at this season, you had their running back committee that was great all season. Chris Carson, Rashad Penny. Rashad Penny goes down with an injury late in the season, doesn't come back. So then you get Marshawn Lynch on a 1-year deal or whatever they signed him to. Then there's hype around that. Chris Carson backing up Marshawn Lynch clearly wasn't the play. But I think it's you get rid of something they relied on heavily during the season, and it's hard to recover when playoffs come around. Obviously, if he's a great quarterback, you'd have to figure a way around that. But it's just like Tom Brady. You took away a solid wide receiving core, and look at the season he had.
I don't know. I just don't look at Russell Wilson as very clutch, and that's a big part of how I rank QBs. There are a couple guys on here who have had issues with that
Deshaun
for
Watson.
me, but they back it up with the fact that they are still impressive at an ultimately high level. And I don't know. I've just never seen Russell Wilson as a clutch guy, which I think might be the reason why I don't have him on my list. But it's not that I don't like him. I think he would be number 6 on my list if I had to say.
And that's fair. Speaking of clutch, at my number 3, I might have. I think I have the best second half quarterback in football, and I hate him. I hate him with all my guts, but he's good. Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is the king of the third quarter or third down. Sorry.
You mean he's the king of when the refs come and make up penalties for the Lions?
You're kidding me. On third down alone.
We all know why the Packers won both those games. On third down
alone.
We all know why the Packers won.
On third down alone, he has 107.4 QBR average with a 108 to 28 TD to interception ratio on third down. Let alone.
Listen, I will tell you the truth. I have Aaron Rodgers on my top 5 current list. I'm not going to say where. I'm not going to spoil that yet. But
I think arguably,
I think that the problems that Aaron Rodgers causes in the team environment alone is enough to knock him down. I do not think he should be number 3. Based on how he behaves.
I thought about that, but you look at his wide receiver core, dude, the best wide receiver he's ever had on his team, Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson.
Well, yes, I agree. He hasn't really had great wide receivers in his career. In that sense, he's a lot like Tom Brady. He's had 2. I think he's really only had 2 really good receiving options, similar to Brady with Randy Moss and Gronk. And I do agree with that. And if Aaron Rodgers, if I thought he was a better teammate, I would personally put him probably number 3. But I didn't because I don't think he is a very good teammate. I mean, just look at this past year when his team struggled on the West Coast. What was the first thing he said during news conferences? He didn't say we need to work harder and all this other stuff. Common QB things that are meant to help boost the team and make everyone feel better and try to make everyone inspired to do better. He didn't do that. He specifically went out of his way to say some guys did some things that they shouldn't have. Personally called them out. Not to mention he beefed with his head coach. I think he's beast with every head coach he's ever had
Yeah.
on some level, to the point where when they brought in Matt LaFleur this past off season, not this current off season, but the past off season, uh, in the internal Packers organization sent him I can't remember who it was, but they sent him a memo that said, "Don't be the problem." That I mean, clearly this guy is a great football player. That there's no doubt about that, and I do respect the football player in terms of what he's been able to do on the field. But when we're talking about top five current quarterbacks, keep demoralizing your own team or calling out your own teammates when you could really handle that internally in the locker room. You can do that in the locker room because that's not being broadcast to everyone across, everywhere when you handle it in the locker room. But to do that on television, kind of unprompted, that's just a sign of, I think, deflection for his own poor play in those games and uh, kind of bad being a bad teammate. I mean, if he was a good teammate, like I said, he'd be number 3 on my list behind who I have next. But he'd be at the same spot that you have him. But I just don't think that.
Yeah,
that works.
I think I get the team aspect. Obviously, team players are where it's at. You look at Tom Brady, good example for almost everything. He gets along with everybody, and look at his success. But Aaron Rodgers, I think his stats make up for that. He averages 4 touchdowns, over 4 touchdowns for every 1 interception he throws. That's ridiculous, dude.
But
if he throws 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns a game, and then he gets a pick in that game, you're winning that ball game every day of the week.
Well, yes, that's impressive. I'm not denying that is impressive. Those stats are impressive. But the simple fact of the matter is that if you demoralize your team where they don't want to play for you, I mean, look at Tom Brady. He single-handedly motivated half those teams because I guarantee you, Bill Belichick was not the one doing the motivating. He was doing the planning. He was doing the. I guess he probably did some of the motivating, but in different ways than Brady did. Brady single-handedly propelled them to that. I want people to remember this. Brady single-handedly, based on sheer momentum alone, propelled his team into the Super Bowl in 2018. That was single-handedly, almost single-handedly, his momentum and his war cry that got them to the Super Bowl. Because yes, they were kind of the, I guess you could say, underdogs, if that's possible for them. But they really were. People were not expecting them to win. And people always bring up, oh, well, he wasn't very good in the Super Bowl. Well, he didn't need to be. At that point, the Rams were so shell-shocked because they were so poorly prepared. They didn't need to put up a whole bunch of points. If they needed to put up 20 points in that game or 30 points in that game to win, Brady would have been able to do it. But they didn't need to. So why risk the game by slinging the ball around?
I think the Rams were one of the worst Super Bowl teams.
But they
terrible.
Oh yeah, by far. Sean McVay not having them prep, by not having them have music and noise in the stadium when they were practicing. I feel bad for Jared Goff because I think he's a better quarterback than he gets credit for, because he looked shell-shocked in that whole. He was either hungover or he was shell-shocked when he got into that Super Bowl, and I think he was shell-shocked. He did not know what was going on. The look on his face said it all. No one doubted that he wasn't prepared. But my point is that people forget that Tom Brady, before that, people always bring up his poor play in the Super Bowl, and I explain why that's kind of dumb. Because it wasn't really poor play. It was just you don't need to sling the ball around, so why do it? But they forget that before that, they forget that the other games that they played to get to the Super Bowl, Tom Brady was really good. All right, he destroyed the Chargers. He dismantled them. It wasn't even close. It was embarrassing. Against the Chiefs, that throw that he had to Gronkowski, I mean, people are like, oh, well, that wasn't a touchdown pass. He didn't throw a touchdown pass. That would have been a touchdown pass. It's as good as a touchdown pass when it gets you within 3 yards of the end zone. That's as good as a touchdown pass. It's not all about the stats of the games. It's about what you do in those games that sometimes aren't captured by statistics. And that's really what the point is. Aaron Rodgers has never done that. He's never motivated his team to a victory. I personally don't think. He has willed his team to a victory with his ability to throw, but he's never made his players want to play harder than they think that they could. He's never been that guy who has single-handedly motivated his team to go 120%. He's the guy who might, at best, not lower your team morale, and that's just what I think personally.
Anyways, I'd like to clear up before we go on to 4 and 5. Controversial as it is, I think my number 6, 7, and 8 quarterbacks going into this next season are Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson.
Okay, that is a bit
my number
different
4
than what
though
I had.
is Drew Brees. I think it's obvious.
That is where I have Drew Brees at number 4 as well.
His Super Bowl, I think you can discredit that a lot. But I still think that he was a Super Bowl worthy quarterback.
Yeah, you have to look at the fact.
I think look at his notable players he's played with. I think he had Jimmy Graham in his prime, so obviously good tight end. I think Michael Thomas is extremely overrated. Alvin.
Yes, yeah, we've all seen the Twitter.
Alvin Kamara, I think, was a fantastic replacement for Mark Ingram. I think Alvin Kamara is honestly, very arguably, top 5 running back in the league. But before those 3 guys, I mean, the most notable player you have is Marquise Colston. I guarantee you've never heard that name.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. I have Drew Brees at number 4 as well. And I would like to clear up with some people why I have him so low, because I know a lot of people are fanboys over Drew Brees to unrealistic levels. Drew Brees, I will have everyone remember, won his first Super Bowl in the midst of what is the only proven NFL scandal, which we will cover in a future episode. He is the only member of a scandal to win a Super Bowl that the NFL can really prove and hasn't really tried to cover up. Because I think we all know that with Deflategate, I mean, when you have a Harvard physics professor coming out and saying that the NFL is wrong and the government rules that the Patriots are only innocent because it's not their place to rule on that sort of thing, I think that that's pretty bad look for the NFL. You can say Spygate. Well, Spygate, what year was that? That was 2007. What happened in 2007? Keep in mind that this was reported by the Jets team. The Jets. In 2007. Keep in mind who reports these sorts of things. The Jets. What did the Jets do in 2007? Well, they weren't very good. And it was in week 3. Or actually, it might have been week 1. It was week 3 or week 1. Either way, not very early in the season. And before that, I think the Patriots had just played some, decent competition. I'm not positive on that. I can't really remember who they played before that. I think they played the Jets in week 1, though. So keep in mind who these teams are who bring these allegations up. What did the Patriots do in the rest of 2007? They went undefeated until they got to the Super Bowl, when Eli Manning improbably got the most incredible dose of luck I think any of us have ever seen in our lives. But that's besides the point. This is just going into my Drew Brees, why I have him at number 4. And it's purely because his only Super Bowl ring to me does not feel legitimate. Because it was the only proven NFL scandal to ever take place. And at that, it's probably the most heinous one, too. Intentionally trying to injure players, whether it's through legal means or illegal means of, in terms of tackling, it doesn't really matter to me if you say, oh, well, they were saying to do it through legal tackles. Okay, you're still trying to hurt another player, someone who you might play with in the future. And then you have to keep in mind who they did this against. They did this against every team they played. And what did they do in the NFC Championship game? They absolutely robbed the Vikings. Brett Favre was having a career year, a comeback year, an incredible year where he was just going off. They looked like they were going to win the Super Bowl. Guess what happens? Guess what the bounty was? Guess who the bounty was put on? Brett Favre. People criticize his gameplay in that game, but it's because he was getting late hit after almost every single play. The rest weren't throwing flags for it because keep in mind, this was 2007. Even though late hits were still against the rules. And then when Brett Favre had to come out of the game, he actually soldiered through it and came back out. It probably would be against the rules today, or at the very least would be heavily scrutinized by the league, but he came back out and tried to win that game. And he was trying to get rid of the ball so fast because he knew that he was going to get hit anyway that he threw an interception to end the game. If you think that Drew Brees was not aware of what was going on, then I don't know what else I can say to you. Guys in a locker room talk about that sort of thing because it's the only place they can talk about that sort of thing. You don't think that people were talking about how they were making extra money from taking people out of games? Drew Brees was aware of it. Whether you want to admit it or not, he was aware that Bountygate was going on. Same as Sean Payton, no matter how much he lies and complains that the league is biased against him. Yes, Sean Payton, when you continually criticize the league and you continually try to deny that you were involved in ending people's careers, yes, the league is going to not like you very much. But that's basically why I have Drew Brees where he is, because I don't think he should have been moving on. At the very least, the game that he won to get the Super Bowl was illegitimate, and that's just how it is. If that hadn't happened, yeah, he'd be. I'd like him. I would, and I still do think he's a nice guy. I just think that he made a bad choice as a young quarterback in the league who wanted to win a Super Bowl. He was young. He made a mistake, and I can see that. But the fact that they've never owned up to it, the fact that Drew Brees defended his coach, which is usually a good thing, the fact that he let a fellow quarterback have something like that happen to him, it just feels wrong to me that he knew that sort of thing was going on. And he did know that it was going on, because people do talk. So that's my take on why he's my number 4. I'll let you get on to your number 5, or if you have anything more to say about Drew Brees being your number 4.
I think wrapping up.
Feel free.
I think wrapping up Drew Brees, I think it's just, I still think, I think Brett Favre had a very good chance at that Super Bowl. If you were to take away the scrappy play, or the illegal play rather, of the Saints defense. But I think if that Saints defense had just played a normal game without this Bountygate stuff, I still think if Drew Brees, similar to Tom Brady, I think Drew Brees could have willed his team's way to a Super Bowl ring. But nonetheless, what happened happened.
Yes, I agree. I think that he would have. That's what I don't understand. That team was good. They didn't need to try to hurt fellow players who they might be teammates with in the future. And they could have won that game. I mean, I don't know. Now, that Vikings team was also very good. But if they won that game legitimately and it wasn't tainted, imagine how that would have been one of the top games in history, behind only the 28-3 comeback of Tom Brady, I think. Just in terms of sheer firepower, you got gunslinger Brett Favre playing against a young Drew Brees over a battle for who gets to take the NFC over as the old goes out and the new comes in. That would be a cool game. But when you look at the fact that they were trying to hurt Brett Favre, it's painful to watch that game back. I tried watching that game again recently, and it made me mad. I couldn't watch it. It was disgusting, the type of play that I saw going on that wasn't getting flagged. So I think that personally has really lowered my opinion of Drew Brees. He seems like a nice guy, and I think he does, whether he admits it or not, I think he regrets not doing more about Bountygate when it was occurring. But when he was, like I said, when he was younger, probably didn't cross his mind that, I can probably win this game without taking my opponent out.
Right.
That sort of thing. So
I'll
let you get on to your
I think
number 5.
my number 5 is the most controversial thing that might be ever said in unrestricted history. But I'd like to hear your number 5 before I go.
All right, so I'll just fill you. I'll just fill in the gaps in my list. So you know my number one and my number four. My number two is this goes back to the talent around him. Um, in terms of pure talent, that might be another discussion. I think that this individual is a little overhyped because this team was going to the playoffs and had a very good quarterback who was doing the same, not the same numbers, but still really good numbers and taking his team to the playoffs every year or most years. And that is Patrick Mahomes, and that's purely because of the talent that's around him. And I think I do think that his talent is greatly overrated because that what he has around him is truly
Right. And
insane.
that,
And it
that's
is going to,
yeah.
and it's Patrick Mahomes. So,
See, this is the part where I think I'm gonna get
I,
a little bit of shade, but you said it. You said it. Patrick Mahomes was drafted into the best system in football. Offensively.
Yes. Offensively, the
I
best system
think
in football, undeniable. Alex Smith, who by the way wasn't a bad quarterback, and
he
by any
wasn't
means he really has
he
been
wasn't the
kind of screwed
modern
over by the
quarterback.
football gods. Yeah, but Patrick Mahomes, when he does those no-look passes, when you really look at the throws, a lot of them aren't actually that amazing. Some of them are only barely being caught by his wide receivers because they aren't as accurate. Now, don't get me wrong, Patrick Mahomes is very accurate. I think he's one of the most accurate in the league. I think he has some of the most arm talent in the league for a young quarterback. I do think he's going to be one of the future best quarterbacks in the league, at least in terms of current quarterbacks. And he's already number 2 on my list. And I don't like the Chiefs very much. Just because the bandwagon culture and a lot of the Chiefs fans that I've seen in comments, you guys are a little bit arrogant, all right? I hate to break it to you. I love you, though, because you give me a ton of content to work with because of that. But I do think that Patrick Mahomes is a bit overrated in that regard because the things he has around him elevate an already talented player to a whole nother level. And, that's still part of being a good quarterback. Part of being a quarterback and how good you are as a quarterback is about what you have around you. There are some quarterbacks like Drew Brees and Tom Brady that are able to break that mold where they never really have a number 1 wide receiver for most of their careers, and they still manage to become some of the greatest of all time. I am interested to see how Patrick Mahomes does in a system that is less plentiful as it is right now, because that's really what's going to decide for me if he's any good or not. Right now he's my number 2 purely because of what he's already done and what his potential is with the weapons around him. What I'm interested to see in terms of his greatness and how great he'll be all time is purely related to how he does when he has less around him. Because Chiefs fans, I hate to break this to you, you are not going to have all of these weapons for very much longer. What was your guys' salary cap? $14 at the start of the offseason? Sure, you've made some space, but that's not saying very much when it's like, Tyreek Hill, some of the beefiest offensive linemen I've ever seen, Travis Kelce. You guys have a truly great offensive system right now, and all those guys are going to want to get paid. And if Patrick Mahomes doesn't take a team-friendly deal, which I think he should, if he cares more about winning than he cares about money, the money will come with being successful, is how I always look at it. But if he wants to just have the security of having money, you can do that without breaking your team's bank. Now, if he wants to break his team's bank, he isn't going to be very successful long term because they are going to cut people. That's just the way it's going to work because they're not going to get rid of Patrick Mahomes. Are you willing to sacrifice Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, your beefy offensive lineman? Are you willing to sacrifice some of those luxuries if you want to get a big paycheck? And that's how that's going to go down. If either way, it's completely his right to make whatever decision he makes in terms of how much he gets paid. I just think that it's a matter of what his priorities are, if he wants to win or if he wants to get paid. And it seems like a lot of the younger quarterbacks are leaning towards getting paid, even though at the safest position in football, besides kicker, at the safest position, I don't really think that they need to worry about their security as much as quarterbacks in the past. Like people like Brett Favre and Tom Brady before. Look at People say Tom Brady doesn't take hits. Tom Brady took some very serious hits. The reason he avoids those serious hits is because he wants to prolong his career so he can be successful.
And that's how quarterbacks make their money.
So
if they want to be a team friendly deal.
Yeah, if quarterbacks really want to make big time money, just stay safe and stay in the league longer and take more team friendly deals. Because I think over time, that's a more stable income that's going to be lasting for longer, rather than big upfront contracts that are going to expect you to keep putting your body on the line in terms of what Patrick Mahomes likes to do with his little scramble outs, which are impressive. But he's not going to be able to keep relying on that scramble ability forever. If he wants to play until he's 42, 40, maybe even 35 if he keeps running the way he does. I mean, he doesn't run that much, but if he wants to keep being a top-tier quarterback like he is right now, he's going to have to eventually adapt his gameplay style. But yeah, so that's my little explanation on why I have Patrick Mahomes at number 2. And I think it's justifiable in that way, because, I mean, Tom Brady is on this list, one, because of his talent, but also because the weapons he has around him, and that's a big part of who's going to be the best quarterbacks in the league. Because you can have the best quarterback in the league, and I mean, we've seen this with Tom Brady. You can have the best quarterback in the league, but they aren't going to put up the most impressive numbers if they don't have
I think you said it. The reason Patrick Mahomes isn't on my top 5, he was set up. If he is set up for success. Like, if he didn't succeed in that system, I would wonder why he played college football. You know, like if you can't succeed in that Chiefs system, you are a bum quarterback.
Yes, that would be that's the same thing, is that if it was a really bad quarterback who didn't succeed in that system, it would be a completely different story. But I think I'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he is talented. There is no doubt that he is talented in terms of his arm strength and his scrambling a bit, his agility, his mobility, his accuracy. Those things are really good, but he is overhyped by a lot of his plays. There's Matthew Stafford's made some really impressive plays too. You want to know the reason why they don't get promoted? It's because he isn't on a winning team. The Lions have continually screwed over Matthew Stafford, and the only reason Matthew Stafford isn't at number 1 on my list as a top 10 quarterback, or on my top 5 list at all, is because the Lions aren't setting him up for success, and I don't even know if he's going to be on the Lions at the end of this year. Personally, I think the Lions have really always mistreated their greats. I am a Lions fan. Nolan is a Chicago Bears fan and likes to bring that up a lot. But there's no denying it. We have continually mistreated our great players. In any other system, Matthew Stafford would be one of the staple quarterbacks of the league. The reason why people make fun of him for being a stat patter, he isn't a stat patter. He's single-handedly carrying his team, because he doesn't have a run game. So yes, his stats are going to be better than quarterbacks that have a running game, a really good offensive line, a good defense, because they don't need to worry about that. And that's one less thing for them to have to
That's why
manage.
I have him at my number 5. Matt Stafford could be the best quarterback in football.
Okay. Yeah, if Matthew Stafford was on any good team that actually cared about winning and not profit, which the Lions do, all right, being a Lions fan, they are operating purely for the profit of owning
this is the thing
Lions team.
Is as a Bears fan, I look to 4 games in our schedule every year. I look to the Packers games, and I look to the Lions games. Vikings, whatever. Vikings, Vikings are Vikings. They're either decent or they're bad. Recently, they've been pretty bad. Making the playoffs, whatever. If you can't beat the Chicago Bears with their inconsistencies, you're not going to win a Super Bowl. But if you give Matt Stafford a Kansas City Chief offense, like, oh my God, that's a dynasty in the making.
That would be something to see. The one year that Matthew Stafford had really good offensive play was when he had just one player, Calvin Johnson. That was, or not year, I suppose. It was years that he had Calvin Johnson. But if you look beyond that, the Lions haven't gone out of their way to try to have him be a successful quarterback. They care about making money. That's how the organization has been run. the whole Ford family does not care about the Lions winning, despite what they may say to Matt Patricia and to the public about, oh, well, if he doesn't get us to the playoffs this year, which I think is really dumb. If you're trying to instill a culture, it's going to take more time than
Exactly.
a year and a half. Now that doesn't mean I like Matthew Patricia. That's a different topic completely. But whatever they say to the public isn't the truth. They don't want to win. They want us to think that they want to win so that we keep buying their merchandise. That's what it is. And I'll always be a Lions fan. But I really want a different owner right now. Like, it's hard being a Lions fan. But but that's basically my reason why Matthew Stafford isn't on here, because he isn't going to be a top quarterback this year, even though he was last year. I think he's going to be trying to protect himself a bit this year because the Lions have been angling to trade him for a long time.
If the Lions defense gets better, which it did this offseason, Jeff Okudah, I think that's a big get for the Lions. But I think they missed out on getting. Getting a wide receiver in the second round. You know, you take the running back and you get the running back by committee. Great. But who are you passing to? Kenny Galladay, yeah, he can make big catches most of the time. But take away Kenny Galladay, and the Lions have a very minimalistic offense.
Now that doesn't mean necessarily that I don't think Matthew Stafford couldn't be. Matthew Stafford could still will himself into being a top 5 quarterback this season, but just like he did last year before he got hurt, because once again the Lions failed to protect him. He could will himself into being a top 5 quarterback again. He was a sleeper MVP pick last year. But that being said, there's been a lot of problems on that offense this offseason that I think weren't addressed, that I think are going to severely hinder them. I don't think he will be a top 5 quarterback this year, which is really, really unfortunate. He's been loyal to Detroit, and Detroit has been loyal to him, I would say. But the Lions organization does not care enough about winning to get him any sort of progress. There has been no progress. There's been regression, if anything, because we went from being 9-7 and getting into the playoffs to absolutely terrible records. I mean, we might as well go 0-16 again and bench Stafford so we can train him away at this point. Because I want Stafford to be successful. He would have won rings if he went to any other team. Because most other teams are trying to win to some extent. The Lions are not.
The future of the Lions, it's really in Matt Stafford's hands. You know, they do bad, get rid of Matt Stafford, draft a young quarterback, rebuild around him. They do well, the Lions could sneak into a playoff spot. I mean, realistically, I don't see it happening. The Bears.
We could, but we forget that we started off the season undefeated.
You tied the Cardinals.
We started off the season undefeated, and we had really I will say that Chiefs game and the Packers games that we lost, we should have won. When we lost that Packers game at the start of the season, when we were 2-0-1, that really killed all momentum on our team. To just get screwed over that badly. After that, I talked with my whole family about it. We're all Lions fans. I talked to my whole family about it. And we all agreed that was the end of our season right there. That killed all the momentum we had. So that was really disappointing. And then that Chiefs game that we lost, as well as the other Packers loss, were really kind of suspect, to say the least. There were some kind of iffy calls in those.
Yeah.
And I think everyone knows what I'm talking about when I say that. Especially if you're a Lions fan. If you're not a Lions fan,
I just want to put this out there as clarification. I think the Lions are a good team, or have the potential to be one this upcoming season. I don't think they will.
I think
with that. You look at the Packers. I think the Packers. I don't think the Packers are going to be the 1 seed.
Yeah.
I don't. I think it's a battle between the Bears and the Vikings for the 1 seed, and that all depends on the Bears quarterback situation. That's another topic for another day. I think the Vikings are an easy playoff
Packers
spot,
fans
easy wild card or number 1 seed. Packers complete toss up. Same with the Lions.
Yeah, I agree with that. After Kirk Cousins won that game, after all the things. People are really unfair to Kirk Cousins when they bring up this primetime stuff. You have to look at the things that happened in those
But
games
they
that caused
are
them to
big
lose were
games,
not
Brennan.
Kirk
You have to
Cousins'
remember
fault.
that. If he can't
Uh,
win a Monday Night Football game, what are
they
you
are
going to do in the
well,
playoffs? You
yes,
know.
they are big games, but some of
Well,
the things that happen are beyond his control. That he couldn't control the drops and the Stephon. I mean, look at this. Stephon Diggs was harassing him on the sidelines in the playoffs because he was upset he wasn't getting targets, but they were winning the game. Diggs cared more about looking good than about winning the game. What was winning them the game,
see, I think
which was
you look
not
at the
throwing
the
to him.
Vikings in the playoffs though, and you got the
I
Minneapolis
think without
Miracle. You got that Kyle Rudolph touchdown late in the game. They've never clearly won a game in recent memory. You know, it comes down to the last minute.
I will agree with that, but they're a
Which
good
isn't
last minute
bad.
team. What can I say? Um, and to all the Packers fans out there who are saying, "Well, how can we possibly not be the one seed?" Listen, listen here. San Francisco, I think, is going to come back. I think they're going to be relatively okay. You are not. You are still not better than San Francisco. You never were better than San Francisco. Your whole team was overhyped to a level that
Your
most
defense, the
teams had
Packers
never
defense,
seen
had
before.
just as much hype to them as the Bears defense in 2018. It was nothing short of it
Yeah,
was
which was
great
ridiculous.
defensive
That was
play, but it's not they're not going to live up to it again. They lost some defensive players. Nobody's going to be able to put up those stats again. The Bears defense proved it. You can't be a good defense forever.
and here's the and here's the thing too. Look at all the things that are going on in the Packers organization right now. It is a fire pit, and it's one
Yeah.
step away from becoming
I
a
don't
burning
think
trash can. Aaron Rodgers got as close as he could to saying he did not like the pick whatsoever. He was on the Pat McAfee show during the draft, and he was specifically talking about getting a skill position player. I don't think he had quarterback in mind when he was talking about that first round draft choice that he was hoping they'd get. They drafted his replacement, and it wasn't like, and this was even worse than the when they drafted Aaron Rodgers over when they still had Brett Favre. This is an even worse situation, and I'll explain why. Aaron Rodgers was projected to be the number one pick, and for whatever reason, he fell all the way down to the Packers draft spot, which was in the 20s. I think it was like 23 or something. I think it was actually the same draft pick that they selected Jordan Love with. The difference, you Packers fans may ask, the difference is that Jordan Love was not projected to be the number one overall pick, and your team traded up to get him when your most notable needs were at wide receiver. If you think that Aaron Rodgers was a bad teammate before, imagine now. It's not going to work out. So that once again, that plays into why he's number 5 on my list. And honestly, if I was him too in this situation, I would be mad as well. But I think that this is only going to amplify the problems that Aaron Rodgers has already had within the locker room. I should get to my last pick though on my top 5 current QBs, and my number that would be my number 3 spot. Keep in mind, my first pick was Tom Brady, second was Patrick Mahomes, fourth was Drew Brees, and fifth was Aaron Rodgers. Deshaun Watson is my number 3.
Oh.
And this one, I was really conflicted about putting on top 5 current QBs for this upcoming year. I was really conflicted because part of me, and this is mostly out of sympathy to Deshaun Watson, I think that he might still be a top 5 quarterback.
You can't
this
say
year.
that.
It is possible.
You can't
He is
say
incredibly talented.
And no, you can say he's talented.
He has carried that Texans
talent.
team.
But you cannot say he'll be a top 5. You cannot lose the best wide receiver in football and get another slot receiver and be okay with it.
I'm willing to give him the shot because I feel like he's been so screwed over by the Texans organization that it's almost criminal at this point with what happened with Hopkins and the comparisons that Bill O'Brien made, comparing one of the nicest wide receivers I think in the league. Hopkins, I mean, he gives the football to his mom, his blind mom, after he catches touchdowns. And Bill O'Brien had the audacity when he felt that Hopkins was more of a leader in the locker room
Bill
than he
O'Brien is
was, and for
special.
good reason, because Bill O'Brien is a Bill Belichick. He's a Bill Belichick wannabe and has none of the skill. Um, he calls Hopkins into his office and compares him to
That's tough.
Aaron Hernandez.
That's a bad comparison.
Are you serious? Are you serious? It's unbelievable. So this is mostly out of pity for Deshaun Watson. I think maybe he could propel himself into the top 5. That's
I think it'll be
that's more of a
interesting because
hope than
his
a probability.
last season wasn't his best season. You look at his 2018 season, best season of his career. Obviously, more good seasons to come. But I think losing DeAndre Hopkins isn't case for having a comeback season. I think the Texans honestly are a rebuilding team now. I think in their division's horrible, by the way. But I think in their division, I believe the Colts will be the division winners. I think Phillip Rivers has the best system he's ever been in his life. I think the Titans will come back, but I don't think they'll be as good as last year, to be honest. But the Colts are a threat.
No, they won't.
They replaced everything they lost. They brought in a decent quarterback. They drafted a good quarterback, and the Texans got way worse.
I will say this. Phillip Rivers got a lot of crap last year that I don't think he necessarily deserved, because he kind of was, I think, trying to protect himself because no one was really getting open for him. So what did he say? I'll just throw it up and see if they can make the play. If not, we're a losing team anyway, and we're always playing 16 road games, so I don't really care. I want to get out of here after this season. I think that was a hard choice for him to make, but I think that's the one he made because he wants to keep playing, and he isn't going to put himself on the line for a team that has 16 road games a year and that really wasn't expected to win very much. I mean, you had some people who expected them to continue after their 2018 playoff when they got blown out by the Patriots, but come on, you don't just get blown out by the Patriots like that and come back fine the next year. I don't think anyone should have really expected that of that team, especially when they faced a lot of rough games to even get there in the first place. So I do have to agree with you on that, and you're probably right. I think the Texans as a whole will not be a playoff team.
Deshaun Watson
I do think that Deshaun Watson can still be a really
team.
good quarterback.
I don't know how Brandon Cooks is going to be with him, but we'll see.
I mean, Stafford was a top 5 QB until he got hurt, which was, again, completely his organization's fault. And he actually tried playing it through a broken... I'll keep this in mind for people who say that, it's not the Lions' fault he got hurt. They intentionally... they let him keep playing with a broken back. And for the most part, I think most reports were that the Lions weren't even aware that it was even an issue. They were letting him play with a broken back, and then they illegally pulled him from the game roster before a game and got fined for it. I mean, it can't be justified that just because you're on a bad team, you're going to be a bad quarterback. Now, that being said, with everything that Deshaun Watson has lost, Hopkins was always his security blanket. He could always trust that Hopkins would be there. And they traded Hopkins for I don't even know, a used
David
tissue.
Johnson isn't going to be
that's
helping
about
the
what they
franchise
got
out
for him.
anytime soon.
And David Johnson was a really good running back in 2016. The dude has not put out since 2016. Not even in fantasy. So, I don't know. Personally, it's probably not likely, but I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he is talented enough to will himself into the top 5 quarterbacks, if not into a playoff team. So, if you have anything else to add, that'll be it. But that is our top 5 current quarterbacks
That's all I got.
in the league.